held as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is possible following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting either from the Council chamber or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that the mobile phones are switched off or to a silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones on where they're remote, their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Whether in the chamber or remote, if any member or officer wishes to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I will receive the requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking and the chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I would also like to ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Item number 1, apologies for absence. I understand there are none. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 of the agenda then is the approval of the minutes. The minutes are pages 3 to 14 and they are for correctness only. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Both the agenda and the minutes of the last meeting have bracketed lay members and councillors together mistakenly, but this hasn't appeared on the hard copies because they've been printed already, but we've updated the web so that it distinguishes the two sets. So sorry about that, Chair, just a little error on our part.
No, that's okay, Mark. Obviously, on the minutes, I'm there as present as councillor, Mr. Gareth Chapman.
I've amended that.
Okay. That's very kind of you. Okay, so subject to that amendment, are there any other amendments? Correctness? No, there are none. Can I have someone move the?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have a seconder, please?
I second, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? That's the easiest way to do this. Otherwise, I have a show of hands. Anyone against? No, they're carried unanimously, subject to that small amendment. Item 4 on the report then is the Governance and Audit Committee Action Report. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Mark Alvin, Senior Democratic Service Officer Committees. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the Governance and Audit Committee Action Record, Chair. As members are aware, this has been devised to assist the committee in tracking the decisions made by the committee, included any follow-up actions where required. The action record is attached to Appendix A of the report. Members are used to now receiving this report, which we've put on the agenda for quite some time and in advance of the last term of office. So without further ado, Chair, I'll take members to the recommendation in paragraph 9.1 of the report, where the committee is recommended to note the action record and provide any comments upon this as and where appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mark. Are there any questions from anyone? Councillor Griffiths?
Chair, there was a matter arising from the last meeting around a security audit that I responded, and then Carriage responded in the email about a potential future presentation to us about the security aspect. I wonder whether we could add that to the programme, please.
Whether it needs to be in here or whether it needs to be as an item for the next meeting when we do the forward work programme.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Chair. I'm not sure, Chair.
Yeah, I think obviously this picks up matters which we've discussed in previous meetings. So I would have thought, subject to what Caris says, Caris, are you happy to put this on the work programme when we come to that at the end of the agenda? Yep, I think that's yes. You're muted. You are so, but okay. Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I had one item from the matters arising as well on page 4. We were looking at a narrative definition around the amber and red categories, and I sorry, I might have missed it, but I couldn't find it, so I wondered if there was an update on that too. Page 4, second paragraph from the end. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor David, we already dealt with the minutes. Perhaps the officers could just have a little look at that when we come to the regulatory tracker. Are they happy for that to be dealt with then rather than at the minutes? Because we've already dealt with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fine, thanks.
Thank you. The only questions I've got, clearly some of these matters will be dealt with today because we've got quite a comprehensive report on Audit Wales Governance Audit Committee reports. But the two I just want to pick up is the annual governance statement. Clearly that's been dealt with, hopefully, if someone can confirm, because we would have put that in with the annual statement accounts last year.
That has been dealt with, Chair. Actually, it was dealt with via internal audit. They did some work on that and reported to it, so the matter has been addressed. Yeah,
thank you very much for that. And so obviously that can go on and come off at some stage. And the other matter is the corporate complaints, where at the committee on the 13th of October, I asked whether we could just have a 6-monthly report. That was due today. Any update on that, Caris, please?
Apologies, Chair, we were unable to get it to today's meeting, but we have now suggested it goes on the forward work programme for the June meeting.
Thank you very much for that, Caris. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just note there's an action for Audit Wales relating to rough sleeping and homelessness. So just in response to that, to explain, this was in terms of performance measures and metrics that Welsh Government sets the national performance measures for homelessness and rough sleeping, and they've also been collating some monthly data. I've shared the links with Mark, and obviously those can be shared more widely with the committee to explain how, to give some further information around that. I just thought it'd be helpful to give an update. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Sarah. Obviously, members were a little bit concerned about it. So if Mark or whatever could circulate that information, I'm sure that would satisfy our members. Thank you. Biden?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Right. On the tracker that's under the corporate risk assessment 2020 to 2023. So there is a to do, that's about the third item. So a task and finish group to be set up, and information to be provided to relevant to the scrutiny committee. It shows ongoing. I was just wondering whether I want to continually keep this and whether there is actually a need for a timeline to be put there rather than keeping it as ongoing, because it will probably be here permanently.
Caris?
We obviously keep abreast of the corporate risk assessment very regularly. It's actually due to come back to this committee in June, I think. We're due to come back. So we're currently updating it now, and we'll take on board the comments that were made by committee last time we came with regards to some of the presentational issues within that. So that will be part of our review to come back to you for the June meeting.
Thank you, Caris, for that. There being no other questions, any comments from anyone? No, we'll move to the recommendation that we note the action record, and obviously Mark can pick up the comments that have been made today. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll move formally, Chair.
I second.
Thank you, Councillor Rambo. Another seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you. Item 5 then is the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports. Rachel? Sarah? A double act?
It is, yes. Thank you, Chair. I'm Rachel Freitag, Audit Manager for Audit Wales, responsible for financial audit. So I'll take us through the financial audit section of the first report and then hand over to Sarah to take us through the performance audit aspects, if that's okay. So
yeah,
quite short and sharp on the financial audit front. Our audit of the 21-22 financial statements and 21-22 grants work is now complete. You would have seen the reports the various reports coming through committee to cover off those two bits, and the audit of the 22-23 statement of accounts. As I'm sure you're aware, we were late signing last year's accounts due to a number of national issues, so our planning work is getting underway now for the 22-23 financial statements, and we are hoping to bring the sort of an outline audit plan to the next committee meeting, and there'll be a more detailed plan following that upon the conclusion of our planning work. But due to a revised audit approach this year, we need to go through the motions and work out what the audit risks are in detail before we can bring a fully fledged plan to you. If there's no questions specifically to the financial audit work, I'll pass over to Sarah.
Any questions for Rachel? Only question for me, Rachel, I should imagine the fee will be looked at in great detail in regards to a possible reduction, hopefully.
I think given the I think our fee consultation set out a possible increase, unfortunately, to audit fees due to the revised audited standard that requires an awful lot more risk assessment. But yeah, we'll come on to that, I'm sure, in the audit plan when that comes through committee. Yeah.
We wait with interest. Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just quickly cover off the performance audit side of things. Sorry, for the record, I'm Sarah Jane Byrne. I'm the performance audit manager from Audit Wales. So in terms of hopefully you'll be familiar with our assurance and risk assessment process. This is the process that we do at all 22 councils to look at the risk. We look at a range of services, a range of arrangements. It helps us to determine whether the council's got proper arrangements and is meeting the sustainable development principle, but it also helps us shape our future work. So we set out last year some of the areas of focus. So financial position, that's one that we will keep an eye on at all 22 councils. That's an ongoing piece of work, really. We are going to be doing a piece of work around capital programme management. I'm hoping that there'll be a project brief coming out to the council fairly shortly, setting out the scope of that work. But as I said, that will be a piece of work that will be done across all 22 councils. We intend that there'll be a local report as well as a national output. We're also doing a thematic piece of work around user performance information. Again, that will be done at all 22 councils. It's got a very specific focus, looking at the information around service user perspective and outcomes. So we're currently kind of trying to get all that work set up. I just wanted to make the committee aware that originally we were going to be doing a piece of work around setting of wellbeing objectives. Because we wanted to focus on other areas of work, we have decided to defer that piece of work till 23-24. We've made the officers aware of that. Other pieces of work, so if there's a thematic review around unscheduled care, so this is a piece of work we're doing jointly with our health colleagues. Again, we're doing it across Wales. Just an update on that. It says that the reporting will be from April, but obviously given that it's the final week of April now, it will be May. So I just wanted to give an update around that. And also we're doing a piece of work around digital. This is around digital strategy. Again, a piece of work we're doing across all 22 councils, and we're currently aiming to get all that work done over the summer. And then the last one there is the performance management, and I'm going to be covering our findings on that shortly. The rest of the timetable update gives an overview of some of the local government studies and where we are with those, as well as the work of the other regulators. But happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions on Sarah's performance management pieces of work? No? Okay. And then we've got the appendix.
I think there's one question, Chair. Sorry.
Oh,
from one of the
sorry, Councillor Griffiths, my apologies.
Hi there. So I think I'm on the right section. Page 43, I think, is included in what you're covering at the moment, or 43 in the full documentation pack. One of the things it talks about is the Transformation Leadership Programme Board across Bridgend, with the move of Bridgend into Cwm Taf, and it talks about having much stronger planning for the combined or for the switch of Bridgend into the new authority, and I wondered whether there's more detail about what the action points are for that leadership programme board.
Chair, are you happy for me to just come in there?
Yep.
I think, to be honest, I'm not sure if is that in relation to our annual audit summary. Apologies if I'm looking at the right document. And we did come and attend the audit committee, I think, at the last audit committee, to give an overview of the findings from that piece of work we did around the TRPB. And I know the Director of Social Services also attended to give an update in terms of the progress. So in terms of your particular inquiry, I guess that's probably more directed to the officers, I would imagine. But I just wanted to check if it was in relation to the annual audit summary. Sorry, which we'll come on to next. But
it's page 43. I may be jumping ahead, Chair. Apologies if I am.
Yeah, I think it may well be a question for the Director of Social Services and the integration with health. So,
okay.
If some of the officers could maybe just pick it up and get back to you on that, Councillor Griffiths.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions, we then on Appendix C, the performance management review.
Did you want me to cover the annual audit summary first? Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
I mean, all I want to say on this one really, this is just a summary of all the work that we've undertaken, other regulators have undertaken since last annual audit summary. I wasn't proposing to pick up any of the detail because obviously we have, come back to committee with the reports over the course of the year. It is a report that we share with all 22 councils, but if there are any particular questions, I'm happy to take those. Thank you, Chair.
No, sorry, Sarah. I took it as read because obviously it's a factual report.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So there we are. My apologies. If there are any questions on that? Nope. Okay, Appendix C.
Okay.
I assume this is, it should be the officers responding to this because clearly you've done your report, an action plan has been prepared. The only point I'd like to make is in regards to the action plan, whilst you may have accepted it as obviously as Audit Wales, is it maybe worthwhile in the future from an officer point of view and from this committee point of view, is that we certainly have an update report as to the actions that have been taken to address the recommendations, because in my mind there's a series of key dates which obviously some of those have now been met and have gone past, and the officers are working extremely hard on developing plans to address the recommendations. So I think in my mind for members, rather than have a raft of questions, is to the officers is to actually say, what's happened to date, who's done what, and what are the next stages, because at least then we get a complete picture of the plan and what's being done. And again, a lot of it, certainly about the data, collect a lot of data, but don't analyze it. I think a lot of that certainly links in with like corporate complaints and compliments, because again, you can learn a lot from complaints. And actions out of that will change service delivery, presumably. So yes, maybe for the next time, whether we could sort of have a report from the officers, not from yourselves, because we got your report. Can I, Councillor Griffiths, can I just ask Alex to come in first? And then obviously their questions, then I'm sure Alex or the officers will pick them up. Thank you.
Yeah, this is only to say that Rachel Keepings and I were talking about this after the last time we went through the regulatory tracker. And when we bring the regulatory tracker back in July, this coming July, we were intending to put a recommendation to Governance and Audit Committee about that. And that was about having general invites back to the officers responsible for any regulatory recommendations 6 months after the report. So that probably plays into exactly what you've just said.
Yeah, it's useful, I think, so that members see the picture as to where they're at at a point in time, rather than the key. There are actions, and those actions will have action plans anyway under them. So if they've been delivered or if they've slipped, then what's happening? Is there a policy now or a strategy? Do you know what I mean? So at least the members got grip of it all. Thanks, Alex. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so on this particular topic, I've been following up with Data Wales, which, if you're not aware, is an organisation that is set up to support local councils in the use of data. I had a very productive conversation with one of their liaison officers just last week, who's offering support in this area and also in fraud and error. And they are happy to put in extra people to support activities like this, and also to bring best practice from other authorities, which obviously they work across all the authorities. Now, I know that Alex has already had some contact with Data Wales, but I think the offer of resources to help us is very, very beneficial. So I'd like to make that suggestion and also an introduction, if necessary, to the lady that I've been speaking to within Data Wales.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I think that'd be very useful if there is some resource out there which the council doesn't have to pay for, but it's got areas of expertise, then why not use it? So, and if there's good practice being brought about, then obviously Bridgend can see whether or not it wishes to adopt it or not. And thank you very much for making that introduction. I'm sure the officers will appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry for jumping about again. Before we move on to Appendix C, I've also got something I'd like to raise, not on page 43, on page 44 this time, around the Time for Change Poverty in Wales response. So it's in two parts, really. So first of all, in terms of Audit Wales, so I thought it was a great report, and I actually managed to attend the event you ran in Cardiff. And there were two good examples actually in the report, highlighting good work in Bridgend, so that was good. But in terms of Bridgend's response there to Audit Wales to start with, have you got any comment on that response?
Sarah?
Yep. So just to clarify, is the response in terms of our Time for Change Poverty report? That's what you're asking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to say that I assume that's going to be picked up as part of the regulatory tracker, and Alex may be best placed to advise on that. We haven't done any further work since we issued this to look at, particular councils' responses. Clearly the report was issued back in the autumn, and we'd need to give a bit of time for councils to look at that. But yeah, Alex or another officer might be best placed to think about how they're going to feed that back to the committee, because it's, like you said, it's important that that is the case.
Can I ask then? So can I ask then, do you plan on asking councils? Do you plan on asking councils for an update anytime soon?
As part of our follow-up, what we'll tend to do is we will go back to councils to ask them, how they have considered our reports. We actually wrote to Governance and Audit Committee chairs and the council, probably, I'm trying to think when it was, 18 months or so ago now, really emphasising the need that there is that active consideration of our reports. So we will be looking that there is some kind of consideration and response. So we would look through the regulatory trackers that councils produce, but obviously we could choose to come back in 18 months or time to say, well, actually, demonstrate to us what action, what progress you have made against those recommendations.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So thanks. Yeah, go on, Alex.
Yeah, it wouldn't be picked up in our regulatory tracker, because obviously that picks up specific recommendations to BCBC. But I also attended the event in Cardiff, and obviously you've all seen the corporate plan now. The corporate plan has got a specific aim around tackling poverty and supporting people in need, which will have commitments and PIs against it for the next 5 years. So and obviously that uses the tool that came alongside that poverty report.
Thank you. Councillor Rose, I should imagine this is being dealt with by one of the other committees of the authority, by one of the main committees, and then I would have thought being scrutinised by one of your scrutiny committees. So maybe the questions need to be addressed there at some stage.
Well, Chair, if I can come back in, what I was going to say was basically that, you know, yeah, fair enough in terms of, you know, outcomes and the use of the regulatory tracker, but in terms of the narrative in that paragraph, unfortunately, I kind of disagree with everything that's claimed there. So just to give you an example, it says, so the bit about many of the levers that could be used to alleviate poverty outside of Wales's control. Yes, in terms of the finances, no in terms of the mechanisms. And then just another one, and if you bear with me for a second so I can find the exact sentence. The Welsh Government makes significant revenue funding available, but due to the complexity and nature of the issues, the total level of spend is unknown and no council knows the full extent of its spending on alleviating and tackling poverty. That's absolutely not true. And I'll give you a couple of examples. It's just off the top of my head. You know, so we've got the Flying Start grant, which supports young parents. Communities for Work Plus, which is employment support, and I declare an interest. I manage the Communities for Work Plus team in the Vale. Pupil deprivation grant, which goes to every child who in school who was eligible for free school meals. The discretionary payment grants that make up the difference between what a tenant might receive and the actual rent. That's just off the top of my head. So it's not rocket science. There could be a stab made at actually totting up those grants. And now this financial year, we've got a revised SPF from the UK government. So I can't agree with that point, and it just makes me concerned that the topic, which is, you know, it's one of the most insidious, corrosive influences on society, isn't it, in terms of poverty, and as it was alluded to earlier in the report, I think Bridgend is 11th out of the 22 in Wales. If you look at the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation data, there's also been some comments made by Audit Wales about a lack of attention to data, lack of attention to using data, decisions not being based on data. So that's just one example. And as I say, I take issue with virtually every comment made there, really. And I think we could do a lot better than that. And also in terms of, you know, working with other organisations. You know, Bridgend's got its local Citizens Advice Bureau. We've got BAVO. The organisations are out there that we could form part. And I do know we form partnerships with the third sector, but I just think in terms of bringing things together under the umbrella of tackling poverty, we could do better. So yeah, thanks for that.
No, thank you, Councillor. Obviously, I didn't want to stop you there. You know, our committee is there to look at the assurance mechanisms that are in place in regards to delivering these issues. And whilst we may receive the report, then obviously there are other committees of the council and scrutiny committees that really should be picking these matters up. And I'm sure that the officers will pick it up with their other colleagues in regards to those points. Yeah, I totally engage with you. There's pieces of work going on everywhere, but that's not for this committee. It is actually for other committees. But just before I invite the other councillors to come in, I don't know whether you've got a comment, Caris, on those issues, but I'm sure it should be covered within one of the scrutinies or one of the main committees.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was a national report, wasn't it? So these are nationally based comments, so they wouldn't be unique to Bridgend by any means. I mean, Councillor Davis is right. We could get it together fairly quickly, a list of those grants which we think tackle the poverty agenda. Of course, it's not all just grant funded either. So I do have some sympathy with the comment about how complex it is and tracking it through. But I would suggest if that is an area of concern, we ought to refer it. And if members want to report, it should go to the relevant scrutiny committee and we can pick it up there.
Thank you, Caris. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments on Sarah Jane's report on page 43. First of all, I'm one of two representatives from this council to the South Wales Fire Authority, and certainly, you know, joint working is top of the agenda there. Every meeting it's discussed and reported on. There's a huge amount of work going on in terms of IT and back office as well, so it's good to note that those processes are going on. There's also a good example of joint working between the ambulance service and the fire service at Maesteg, where premises are shared, and I understand that that arrangement is going really well. My other point then is on the direct payments notes. I mean, this is such a shift, isn't it, in terms of ensuring that we manage and we support vulnerable people in our county. But I understand that this does come at a considerable cost in terms of resources and in terms of staff who we have to commit to this. It's very much a transitional process, so I understand. In terms of Sarah Jane's report, I'd be interested to see if there's a indication of the amount of extra resources that are going into this process in Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Again, I think we just need to be very careful about mixing what our role is as Governance and Audit Committee. And again, some of these questions actually should be addressed by the Service Committee or by the Scrutiny Committee. But I don't, you know, I don't wish to stifle discussion or debate. But again, Caris, could you help Councillor Hughes with that, or it's an issue again about funding streams, capacity and resources?
I'm quite happy to take it offline and have a discussion, if you like, with Councillor Hughes, and then decide whether there is information we can either provide or whether we need to route it through a scrutiny committee. Yeah.
Thanks, Caris. Is that okay, Martin?
That's fine, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to also pick up on some of the other work I've been looking at with what best practice in other councils are about data quality and data management. A number of councils which are doing much better than us, I think, in these areas, have established specialist data teams who then own the topic of data governance, data quality across the whole authority, not just in a specific area. And I would just like to suggest that we take a look at some of those and the best practice about setting up a dedicated data team that can. Very often these have a positive business case because they find problems within the data which then reflect lost revenue or spend, which is unnecessary spend. So they're very often positive in terms of the actual benefit. So I'd like us to consider setting something up like that. I'm not quite sure how we do that, but I don't believe at the moment that we've got a dedicated data team. And I know that Alex does a good job on the PIs, but I think it's a wider topic. But I think this is something that we should consider.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I'm sure that, again, not a matter for this committee, but Caris can take that back to the management team, and I should imagine that will be put in the mix with all the other priorities that the councils has to deal with. So whether it considers data to be a high priority is a matter for the council. So, but thank you for the suggestion again. I'm sure, you know, Caris will come back and pick it up, I'm sure, in the future. Caris?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I would just add there that Councillor Griffiths has obviously picked up on a key issue from us that comes from this report, but I suppose to reassure members that actually it was already on our radar as a council, and we are having discussions about, we hold a lot of data as a council, and about how we do exactly as he's suggesting, really pulling it all together so that we can first of all analyse it, check it, analyse it, what's it telling us, and act on it. So certainly there are discussions going on now about how we manage data across the authority and where that is best cited and what's the best way of doing it.
And if I may just have a quick comeback again, Data Cymru Wales is also offering support in this area as well. So they will help us establish a strategy and also give people to actually bring together some of that data on a trial perspective. So I think there are resources outside the authority, because I understand how constrained we are, with headcount and so on. So I think anything we can bring in will be positive.
Thanks, Councillor Griffiths. Caris, can I just clarify which scrutiny committee I assume would be dealing with this, because again they should be looking at ways to improve how the council deals with these issues. I assume it's being dealt with by one of the scrutiny committees.
I think it would go to the corporate overview scrutiny committee, wouldn't it? So I think as we start to pull these discussions into firmer plans, I would suggest it would go there, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Granville.
Just to tidy up the discussion, Chair, I would formally move that the points that Councillor Davis moved are recommended to go to Scrutiny Committee, and other points that have been made today go to the relevant Scrutiny Committees for discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have a seconder of that, though, Richard?
Seconded.
Second.
Thank you. That's okay. Well, we'll just keep that in mind a minute because we're not finished yet. So obviously we've got Appendix C and Appendix D. Are there any other questions now from members? Are there any comments? Caris?
I was just going to ask, Chair, whether we asked Alex to come in to outline some of the work that is already happening. It's one of the appendices on today's report, D, I think. But there is quite a lot of work going on in that particular area, and I wondered whether it would be helpful if she updated committee with regards to some of those issues.
I think that would be useful, Caris, as I mentioned at the beginning. A little report next time would be save your voice, Alex, really, but it also provides members an update as to where you're at and where you are on the progress of these matters. But quite happy for you to give an update. At least then members can be assured of where we're going as a council into addressing those Audit Wales recommendations.
Lovely, thank you. So I just wanted to give you a quick rundown on our response to the Audit Wales Performance Management Review, and to say it's a pretty bad review, but there are a few things that soften the blow slightly that I wouldn't want us to miss. So firstly, it was done late last summer when the performance team was literally down to one person. Capacity issues were off the scale at that point. Secondly, there were no surprises in the report. It echoed exactly the kinds of things we picked up in our own self-assessment. And then thirdly, following the team's move to my team in November, we've developed immediate plans to get it sorted, which have been now to CMB and CCMB. And within that, we've outlined our top priorities are as capacity of performance management, both in the corporate performance team and working on performance across the council, the performance management framework, so including things that Audit Wales raised, like PIs that don't cover the breadth of our wellbeing objectives, PIs that are focused on commitments rather than what we're actually trying to achieve, and the lack of focus on outcome data. Data quality and accuracy, so arrangements to ensure data quality, PI definition documents and evidence and better benchmarking data. Culture, roles and responsibilities, and the performance management system, an old system that we're not really using to its full potential. So there's various things we've already done, some quick wins and some things that we've already got underway. Firstly, around building capacity in the team. So we've replaced the officer on secondment and appointed the 4 graduates that I've been and talked to you about before. We've changed CPA reporting, so we're providing summary recommendations as well as the detailed performance information, and added a meeting back in for Q3. We've asked internal audit to do a PI audit, which reported back in draft form at least this week, which gives reasonable assurance of accuracy, sensible reporting, etc. As you will all know, we've created the regulatory tracker so that all of our audit, inspection and regulation feedback is in one place and overseen by yourselves. We've added additional information that's collected quarterly as part of the usual quarterly performance measurement to improve our self-assessment process for the year ahead. And we are underway with developing a different approach to corporate planning and the establishment of a corporate plan delivery plan, which includes pre-decision scrutiny and lots of involvement and engagement with members and other stakeholders. As well as that, we intend to recruit to the still vacant post in the team, find a permanent home for the performance team, develop a new updated performance framework for the council, and provide updated guidance on roles, responsibilities and dates. We also want to raise awareness of the corporate plan and the corporate plan delivery plan through induction, e-learning and some staff briefings. There's also actions for business support and performance teams in directorates, which in the short term will be about timescales and accuracy of data and commentary, responses to challenge, and obviously also supporting the development of the new indicators for the corporate plan delivery plan. But then in the longer term, I think really the improvements needed are more significant and more strategic. So they have more of a focus on things like culture, and as such will need to be led from the top by CMB. And those are things like developing a stronger challenge culture, improving member scrutiny of performance, and considering replacement of the performance management IT system. And I think that one probably will bring into account all those conversations that Councillor Griffiths was raising about data. So I think, you know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot more to do. We've got a plan, and Councillor Williams has just emailed the Chief Exec about potentially covering some of this at CPA or COSC in the coming couple of months, which I think probably is more of the appropriate place rather than going into too much detail here. But I suppose that's the sort of initial summary, and then obviously 6 months down the line, we'll probably have a lot more to say and hopefully a lot more resolved.
Thank you, Alex. And I think that's the point, isn't it? Just short of a written update for us, just to say this is what's happening. You know, these policies, procedures are being put in place, etc., etc. You know, it's gone to the corporate scrutiny committee or corporate board, and you know, I think that just gives us the assurance that we need. And then obviously the scrutiny committees and that can support you in the work you're doing, and you know, provide the necessary challenge for those sort of strategies or processes or procedures you put in place. So thanks for that. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. If we could make sure the COSC are picking up that, I think that would be the first point I might make. But the second point is that I think this is such an important topic because we can't measure the performance of the council unless we have the core data. And at the end of the day, this is the chief executive's responsibility. So I've no idea whether we're allowed to do this, but could we request that the chief executive's performance indicators for himself, for his review, actually include a section on the successful completion of the programme of work? This is a massive programme of work that Alex is taking on here, extremely challenging, extremely broad, and actually will affect, as Alex has already mentioned, it's about the culture of the council, which really does come from the chief exec. So I wonder whether we could request the people who incidentally actually includes myself, who sets and reviews the chief exec's objectives, to actually include a very specific one around PIs in this programme of work.
Well, a very interesting question. I'm sure we can make a recommendation for, I would have thought, the Cabinet to consider this, and whoever carries out the appraisal of the Chief Executive, because obviously that's not a matter for us as a committee to yes. do that. That's somewhere else to do that. But I'm sure that, you know, I know Councillor Granville's raised a recommendation about some of the points you picked up. And I think maybe it's just a matter we need to send back to Cabinet just to say that, you know, in any forthcoming, you know, the view of governance and audit is that data and well, there may be other things which are sorted out in regards to his appraisal. Is discussed presumably with the leaders and that's taken forward with the chief exec. I don't want to get embroiled in specifics, but again, that's for another forum and for another discussion. But yes, I take on board what you say, Councillor Griffiths.
Yes, it's just a polite request to the people who do that and that committee to include this.
Understand that. Okay, Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. I'm working away at the moment on quite a difficult internet connection, so I hope I can stay in and that all staff can hear me. I'd like to thank Alex for quite a frank and worrying update to the report there, and I would like to agree with the recommendation that she made at the end, that she mentioned that Councillor Alex Williams had written to her and the process of taking this forward. I'd like to agree with those recommendations, and if anything needs moving or seconding, I'm not sure where we are in that process, but to support that. Very concerning information, especially the comment about why perhaps we've got ourselves into that position, being that department was down to potentially one member of staff. I think as a committee, that's part of our role, is to make sure that isn't replicated, that whatever we can do to make sure that roles and departments are properly staffed, we need to make that representation going forward, because the update and the report on this element is extremely concerning from our remit. So thank you for all, and I may have to drop off soon, so I do apologise, Chair. My internet connection is quite poor. Sorry about this.
That's okay. I think, Councillor Bledsoe, the point was made by Alex that Councillor Williams, from his scrutiny role, has raised this issue with the Chief Executive, and obviously Alex is the responsible officer. I think hopefully you, as well as I, have got that assurance that is being taken. It's not being forgotten. Obviously, you've got a good chair of the committee there, Councillor Williams, taking this forward, and hopefully, as we move forward, that will be addressed. And I think, as Alex has said, there'll be another report, I should imagine, in June to us, just updating the progress. So my suggestion is let's leave it to the scrutiny committee. They're dealing with it appropriately, and then when that report comes back to us, then we can look at it again. But I'm assured, hopefully the other members are assured, that this is members have got grip of this at the moment in addressing this issues and taking it forward. And again, with all due respect to what Councillor Simon Williams was saying, is that again we're in a very good position now going forward, and all that support from data, whatever it is, Data Wales, and that I think that more power to the elbow. So I think let's utilise whatever's on offer really to strengthen the council's. Sorry, Councillor Griffiths, I meant, not Councillor. Strengthen the council's data, and let's be an authority that's demonstrates good practice and best practice, and we can be seen as an exemplar once we come out to the end of this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy with all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, isn't it, a key consideration for any organisation conducting an audit
I've lost you, Councillor Davis. I don't know whether any other officers have lost Councillor Davis as well.
Yes, Chair, he's frozen.
Yeah. Councillor Davis, you've frozen. We've lost you. Oh, I should imagine. Let's just give him 2 minutes to get back in. Well, Councillor Griffiths, go on.
If I might just fill the gap for a moment, Chair. I did want to remark, in my conversations with Data Wales, one of the things they came up with was the Bridgend isn't particularly bad in here. There are 2 or 3 councils who are doing it particularly well, but we are middle of the pack on this. We're not absolutely disastrous, but there is a lot more that we can do. So just want to make it clear that most councils are in a similar position to ourselves, especially with the PIs and the use of data. So there's a great opportunity for us to move ahead on this, but I don't think it's a terrible situation just where we are at the moment.
And perhaps you can clarify for me, is Data Wales what used to be the local government data unit?
I don't know, Chair. Apologies.
That's okay, no worries. Alex.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Alex.
Have we got Councillor Davis back in?
Chair, can I move that we move on with the work of this committee today, and if Councillor wants to come back in later, you can take that point back up with him later to make that point.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. I was going to say we will make progress now because I think I've allowed a couple of minutes for him to come back in. So, are there any other? If there are no other questions, are there any comments from anyone? If there are no other comments, we go to the recommendations then. There was one recommendation contained in the report, which we note the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports at appendices A, B, C, and the management responses to the Performance Management Review at Appendix D. And then we had the second recommendation from Councillor Granville, which was moved and seconded, in regard to picking up the points that Councillor Griffiths has made in regards to Data Wales and the use of using them if we can to build resource and actually provide assistance. And I think there were a couple of other issues raised, and no doubt the committee team can pick those up. So if everyone's happy with that, can I have someone to move recommendation 9.1 and 9.2 then in total?
I'll formally move 9.1 and 9.2, Chair.
I second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hughes, seconder. Anyone against? No? Okay, that's carried unanimously. If we then go on to the progress against the internal audit risk-based plans.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that. Hello, I'm Joan Davis, the Deputy Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the committee with a position statement on the progress being made against the audit work included and approved in the Internal Audit Plan 2022-23. The detail is at Appendix A, which is colour-coded. It shows that 17 reviews have been completed with an audit opinion, 6 have been issued as draft, and a further 10 are under review. Therefore, it's estimated that 33 audits will be completed with an audit opinion for 22-23. In addition, work has also been undertaken when no audit opinion has been provided. These are also included at Appendix A. Of the 17 completed audits to date, 5 have been given substantial assurance, 11 reasonable, and 1 a limited audit opinion. This was in respect of a primary school, and details are included within the report, but the key issues were in respect of governance arrangements. All the recommendations made at this school have been agreed, and another audit visit will be undertaken to ensure that progress has been made and the identified risks are mitigated. A total of 90 recommendations have been made across Bridgend for 22-23 to date. As reported during the year, the Regional Internal Audit Service has successfully recruited new audit staff during 22-23, but as previously highlighted, the new staff have had an impact on the current resource available to deliver the internal audit plan due to support and training that's been required. The plan was compiled assuming a full establishment, so although swap internal audit services have assisted, 9 planned audits have not been undertaken during 22-23, and these will be considered in the 23-24 plan. Appendix A also identifies 2 audits that have commenced but will not be completed to be included in the 22-23 audit opinion and annual audit report. Whilst performance during 22-23 was lower than anticipated, it is felt that the 33 audits that will have been completed with audit opinions, together with other sources of assurance, such as external reviews, will provide sufficient level of coverage to allow the head of audit to provide an opinion on the Council's arrangements for internal control, governance and risk management arrangements throughout 22-23. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, John. Are there any questions, members? Councillor Chris?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so on page 68, so this is a topic which I keep coming back to, but it's around cybersecurity. And I just wanted to mention that in my other professional work, I've visited a number of large European companies over the last year around cybersecurity, and they're terrified at the moment. And I use that word advisedly around especially ransomware. And this is a potentially existential impact on the council, which means if we are hit by one of these, we could, for example, have all our officers not being able to open up their laptops. And if you can imagine what impact that would have on the council, it would basically bring us to our knees in a matter of days. And this has happened to global companies. So one, for example, is Maersk, the big container shipping firm. It basically had to shut down its business for 2 months because it couldn't do it. Now, if we had to shut down all our services for even a week, then the impact would be devastating. But my request here really is to increase the prioritization of the cybersecurity work that we have started to undertake, and to really put it at the highest level, because I believe that this risk is both extremely likely and also extremely high impact, and probably it's the one thing that could, as I say, close the council like other risk. So I'm not quite sure how to do this, but I think it needs to change its priority, because I notice on page 68 where we have cybersecurity, it just says under review. So I don't really know what that means in terms of plans. I shared a couple of links, I think, earlier in the week, Chair, around this topic. I can't really emphasize how much European companies, especially at the moment, are very worried about this. The major sort of vector for this is Russian hacking, and unfortunately, the ransomware and associated other types of attacks are not specific. So they can be targeting one company, but actually they hit everybody else. And I'm sure many of us remember the WannaCry virus, which actually hit the NHS and took out vast sections of the NHS for quite some time and had a massive impact. I am concerned that we may be hit as a casualty outside the actual target of Russian hackers. So I don't know. As I say, I think we need to increase the priority and also increase our focus on this if we are to protect ourselves adequately in this modern, rather difficult world at the moment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I think just to quickly respond, and I know Joan will come in. We shouldn't wait for an audit review on this matter if it's of that great importance, and I'm sure it's already on the agenda of the management team of the authority. And as I said, we shouldn't just wait for an internal audit inspection to pick that up. I would have hoped that this can be picked up again through one of the scrutiny committees and obviously through the management team, because as you quite rightly said, local authorities have been hit, as you know, in recent times by these sort of viruses or whatever. And I'm sure that Bridgend's IT team are on it every day, but it's ensuring that the system is robust to deal with whatever comes into the authority. I'm sure if you had the IT specialist here, they'd say, they're attacked in Bridgend 10, 15, 20 times a day, as you would know. But I think it's not for this committee and not for the audit review. I think it's, as you said, it's a higher priority and it should be addressed through the management team. And I would have thought through either one of the scrutiny committees or one of the main committees. Caris, did you want to raise anything?
2 points I was going to make. One was by way of reassurance. We have now had the external review done. We need the feedback to determine where we take it from here. The second issue that I was going to suggest, and I'm sorry, Chair, it kind of cuts across what you've just said, but we're due to bring the updated corporate risk assessment to GAC in June. And the way we've been dealing with the assessment recently is to do a deeper dive into one or two of the issues at the committee because it brings the issues alive for you. So I think we've already mentioned the Director of Social Care came last time to talk about those issues. So I wonder whether actually we use that as a platform to bring it back in here. We could do a deeper dive into cybersecurity, and I can make sure that our IT staff are here, and that would that feel appropriate, I suppose, Chair, that we did that at the next agenda?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think that would be very appropriate given the concern that members express. But apart from the IT staff member, I don't know whether that would be yourself as the director, and maybe the cabinet member as well, responsible for IT. So they hear it in the round and get that, get that message. Yeah, I'm sure they're concerned as everyone else. But at least everyone gets it from the same place. Would that be satisfactory, Councillor Gravis?
That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Caris.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we might have just carried off some of the comments I was going to make, just to echo really what Councillor Griffiths was saying about this in particular audit. I think it does feed those through into next year's audit plan if we can have some sort of prioritisation over the audits and also the number of days allocated to them. I think that will help with my next question, but staying on the bit about IT risks, I think it'd be helpful to have at the next session, because my question was about what is the current risk profile of this, and I think if we see the risk register at the next committee, that would help. I think we need to be thinking about not so much preventing these things, but it's just a matter of time in terms until it happens, and then what is our reaction plan? We need to be able to just pick it up and run with it. So that was the first point on that particular risk. Coming back to the overall plan, I know that we haven't done 9 particular audits, and I know there's sort of been resource issues. I think we've brought in swap services to support the council. I suppose I'm wondering if there's any sort of reconciliation in terms of the days lost through vacancies, sickness, etc. We then adjust that for, I suppose, the days that we've brought in for contractors and seeing if what that difference is. But it's quite difficult. We haven't got the number of days per review. So I think it's just a point to note in terms of how we take the plan forward and reports coming through to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Joan, do you want to comment on our...
Yes, please, if I could, Chair. It was only to go back to Councillor Griffiths' observation about the the work done in cybersecurity in the 22-23 plan. Under review, just to clarify, means that an audit has been undertaken on vulnerability and patch management, and under review means that the report is being reviewed and the draft and final will be issued and an opinion will be put into the 22-23 overall plan, and also to provide assurance that cybersecurity as well as ICT audit will be on the plan for 23-24. And we have one qualified IT auditor and one IT auditor that will commence training during the year. So we're hoping that we will bring key skills into that area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Did you want to, Joan? Did you want to pick up the issue about the 9 outstanding, the prioritization for next year moving forward?
Yes, Chair. The 9 that have been unable to be done this year for a variety of reasons. One being, as I've said, our own resource, and SWAP have covered some as much as they can. The other, in some areas, were down to the service requests and just bad timing issues. So they will be brought into 23-24, and then moving forward, obviously, we're in a much better place now. The staff are being trained, and we will be able to hopefully cover those off as well as the rest of the plan.
Okay, I think just a suggestion about prioritisation. Any of these not been outstanding for several years, so if they were high priority in 2019, 2020, and they're still high priority, then clearly when you come to do the programme for 23-24, that they're the management team and yourselves get together and actually ensure the priorities are put to bed once and for all, whatever the service says, because otherwise we just get into this circular position whereby it's high priority, service team can't deliver it, so it goes into next year. And then all of a sudden you get the same issue again. If it's a priority, then it needs to be dealt with. Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis, good to see you back.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry about that. Dropped out, so apologies. Just quickly, because I think the agenda's moved on a little bit, but I think just want to make a general point in terms of the principle. And what I was talking about was the idea that, you know, as long as we show an awareness, one of the difficulties in terms of anybody carrying out an audit or inspection, as I said earlier, if the subject is not showing via the self-assessment, they're aware of the issues, then you've got a problem. I think Alex highlighted this earlier on. Council showed an awareness of the issues, has explained the problems, and I think it's carried on into the next point then about IT resilience. It's resilience all around, really. But yeah, but basically awareness, self-awareness and self-assessment is key to this committee as well as the other scrutiny committees. So at least there is that as a starting point. Yeah. So thanks for that. Cheers.
Thank Councillor. I'm sure that if there are any other points, Alex or Caris or whatever, one of the officers can pick up what the points you were going to make. But I think we got the message loud and clear. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 69, right at the bottom there, we've got fraud, error, irregularity. And there's a blue box against irregularity investigations. And I just wonder, is that planned, or is that, we've got nothing against it at all? So I'm just asking what the status is, I guess, of that blue box.
If I can answer that, Chair.
Yeah.
It's greyed off. What it is, we allocate some days in case there are investigations that come forward during the year. So we've got some days provided in the plan that we can address those if required. So in that case, there was days, and as a result of an issue, we did some work, accuracy and data and caseload. So that's the overall heading. And then underneath, we would have listed any of the work that we did within that heading. And in this instance, there was one, accuracy and data caseloads. There was no audit opinion because it wasn't an audit. It was an investigation that came to us. But we did make recommendations to improve the control environment. So therefore, we're showing that there was 2 medium and 1 low recommendation made as a result of that work.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Griffiths. Councillor Granville.
Just to go on from what you said, Chair, really, I picked up about the 9 as well that weren't done. Can I just ask the officers, who made the recommendation, or amongst yourselves, to put that 9 off? And what was the brief for putting them off? Because obviously there must be some things there that are urgent, non-urgent, or were they just ordinary things that you were doing and you've decided as an audit team to just to put them off for the following year?
Thanks, Chair. If I could take that. It's
Andrew
Wathen, the Head of Regional Internal Audit Service. Thank you for your question. I think there were a number of reasons for that. Sorry, you can't quite see me yet. Just excuse me a second. There's no...
Use your mic. Use the mic and it'll come to you.
Yeah, okay. Got you. Got me? Yeah, okay, yeah. Thanks. Okay, thanks for that. There are a number of reasons for that. And it was decided by the management team. So it will be, I'm new to the organisation, so it will be my predecessor, Mark, discussing the issues with Joan and with Lisa. Some are where we are accommodating service managers because they're frontline, they're delivering the service. They have sometimes higher priorities than receiving an audit, and we have to understand that and we have to accommodate that. But as Joan said as well, there are some occasions when we just physically haven't got the resources to undertake the work. In terms of the planning process, we do identify whether they're high, medium or low risked, and that will be shown in more information when we can deliver the plan to you in June. So you'll be able to see in terms of how we prioritise that. Sometimes we do have a high priority which gets postponed to the following year, and then we do an annual risk assessment in terms of the planning process to make sure we're covering those off first and early on in the new financial year if we haven't managed to pick them up in the previous financial year. I hope that satisfies your question, Chair.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I think Councillor Granville picks up a very valid point, that I think when the list of audits to be done for 23-24 comes forward in June, I think if there are any matters which have been outstanding for a number of years there, and they are still a priority, I think it may be incumbent upon us as Audit and Governance Committee to actually say this audit is being done this year, despite what the service manager may say or whatever else, because ultimately, I'm not saying we'd be negligent, but I'm just saying that if it's been a high priority for 3, 4 or 5 years, then it may be convenient for the service manager to say, no, I don't want anyone to come in. But ultimately, if it's important for us and important for the council, then I think maybe we just need to crack the whip now and again to say, no, this is being done this year. It's been outstanding for a long time. And I think people need to see an internal audit review as an opportunity and not as a threat. Because again, you pick up and your team pick up some very valid points. And again, it all goes back. It's this circular, it goes back to performance and how do you deliver a service. And, if we can improve that, then that's what we should be doing. So I think it'll be interesting when you come forward in June that we just look at that and there's a table as to how long they've been outstanding, if they've been outstanding for a long time. Are there any other questions? Sorry? No. Are there any other questions? Any comments? Okay, you see the recommendation on page 64 that we note the content of the report and the progress made against the 2022-23 internal audit plan, risk-based plan. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you very much. Anyone against? No. Item 7, the internal audit service charter 23-24. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. That's me. I'm Andrew Wathen. I'm the new head of Regional Internal Audit Service, taking over from Mark Thomas. And this is day 9 for me and 3 governance and audit committees under my belt to date. So a busy start, as I expected. And thank you very much for your very warm welcome at the outset of your meeting, Chair. Notice one of your councillors of your committee has a very similar name to me. But just to reassure you, Chair, neither of us have to declare an interest because as far as I know, we're not related. So in terms of the internal audit charter, the reason we're presenting it to you as a governance and audit committee this morning is for you to consider it and to approve it for 23-24. The internal audit charter is for the regional internal audit service, and it's quite an important document to demonstrate the governance arrangements we have in place. It's about how we operate as an internal audit team across all 4 councils and is now consistent across all councils and will be presented to all governance and audit committee meetings. It sets out how we operate, our responsibilities, the relationships we have with various managers, and my independence as the head of audit to directly deal with the chair of the governance and audit committee and the chief exec if the need arises. So the charter itself is presented into governance and audit committee on an annual basis for the region, and is reviewed on reviewed on an annual basis as well. A very comprehensive review was undertaken in 2021 and reported into governance and audit committee. So we just go through it on an annual basis to see if there's anything additional we need to include to top and tail. Generally, it is a very comprehensive charter compared to other internal audit team charters I've seen with other public sectors, so you're in a good place in terms of that document. It also demonstrates that we continue to be compliant with our public sector internal audit standards, so hopefully gives you assurance that we're doing the right work at the right quality to enable you to have the assurance to undertake the work you need to undertake. So for 23-24, just a minor change, if I can refer members to 4.3 paragraph, which is on page 72 of your pack. We've now included within the Charter reference to the Nolan Principles of Public Life and the Vale of Glamorgan's Council Code of Corporate Governance in the staff declarations. So the team on an annual basis make a declaration to make sure that they're aware of and understand public sector internal audit standards, the principles of public life, and the code of governance within the Vale. So it's a minor adjustment. It's almost an in-house thing for the team, and we make sure that all staff sign up to those declarations to enable us to function effectively. Also, to bring to your attention, Chair, that in compliance with the public sector internal audit standards, we have a self-assessment on an annual basis, but the Welsh Chief Auditor Group has agreed, and it's been agreed with the Section 151 officers across Wales, that we will do a peer review every 5 years. So part of the assessment is for us to undertake an external assessment of the internal assessment compliant with public sector internal audit standards. That is currently underway and will be reported back into Governance and Audit Committee in due course, Chair. At that point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, if I could refer, Chair, to it's on page 83 and section 2.12 about the working relationships, channels of communication with elected members like myself. I'm trying to work out how exactly this would work in practice. Perhaps we could have some pointers of good practice of how that can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it just demonstrates my independence, my team's independence. If you do have any concerns about how the council's business is operating, then you can come to me. There's no formality, there's no hierarchy. We can have a discussion and we can talk around your concerns. I think I'm part of the whistleblowing procedure. So in terms of if you have a serious concern about an irregularity or maybe inefficiencies, again, you can come directly to me. So that's the main emphasis of the relationship. It's accessibility. As me as an independent person, I have to report to one of the Section 151 officers because I'm now a Vale employee, and I report to the board as a regional service for the 4 Section 151 officers. But if any members have any direct concerns around the primarily irregularity side of things, then you're within your rights to come directly to me and have a discussion.
Thanks, thank you. As a follow-up, could you could we be advised on how this would be communicated to all elected members?
Yes, Chair, we'll think that through and we'll work it into a conversation and a communication during 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Martin, this is a matter that should be picked up with the Democratic Services Committee. I'll leave it with the officers to sort out. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Been a bit cheeky. Hope you don't think I'm doing your job for you, but I'd be interested in, as Andrew said, he's attended a couple of other governance and audit committees since he started. Any points raised at those other council governance and audit committees which may be of interest to us today? Anything that jumped out to you in terms of some of the questioning? Thanks, Chair.
I think that's a really valid point, and thank you, Councillor. There have been some comments that have come through. So what I'll do is wait until we've got the conclusion of today's meeting and do a summary of all the points raised across the 4 audit committees, governance and audit committees, and then present them back at a future meeting, Chair, if you're happy with that.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
Biden?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks also to the auditor. I was wondering whether it's worth considering like version control on this charter, right, where we actually see the things that have changed, besides it just being in the cover notes, because until I read the cover note, I actually didn't see the changes. So I think it's probably, if it's worth considering, I guess it's something the audit team can consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Biden. Did you get?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'll consider that and take it on board for 23-24.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any comments? Only one comment from me, Andrew. As I mentioned previously, the charter needs to pick up lay members because obviously when it was written, there was only elected members in post, and it therefore needs now to pick up lay members because obviously in the document it relates to elected members, as Councillor Hughes just said. There's elected members elsewhere, they're members somewhere else. So it's just that clarification that some of us are not elected, but we are lay and we're appointed by the council.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll certainly take that on board for our review of the 23-24 internal audit charter and report back accordingly.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. If there are no other comments, the recommendation, recommendation is that we've considered it, that the committee approve the regional internal audit service charter for 23-24 as attached at Appendix A to this report, subject to those matters mentioned in this committee. Someone prepared to move, please?
Yes, I move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Anyone against? Nope, that's carried unanimously. Item 8 then is the anti-tax evasion policy. Caris, is that you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is me. So actually, for the purpose of the recording, I'm Caris Lord and I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So the purpose of this report before you this morning is to present the updated anti-tax evasion policy to yourselves prior to the policy being presented to Cabinet for approval in June this year. So the Council is committed to establishing and maintaining effective arrangements to prevent and detect acts of bribery, corruption and tax evasion in relation to our services. And the Council also requires all members and employees to demonstrate the highest standards of honesty and integrity, and this includes compliance with the relevant legislation. So the Government believes that relevant bodies should be criminally liable where they fail to prevent those who act for or on their behalf from criminally facilitating tax evasion. So this tax evasion policy specifically addresses the prevention of tax evasion and provides a coherent and consistent approach for all employees and any person who performs services for or on behalf of Bridgend County Borough Council. So the policy does outline for you responsibilities of staff with regards to this matter, the commitment required at a senior level within the council to implement the measures required to limit our exposure to this risk. Also talks about how concerns should be reported, the training and information which is going to be made available to staff on this regard, and also how the policy will be reviewed. So Cabinet approved the anti-tax evasion policy in February 2021. So what you have in front of you is an updated policy, and it does make a few changes, minor changes, and they are outlined for you in paragraph 4.3 of this morning's report. And we do commit to update this policy on a biannual basis. So the proposal is, Chair, that committee is asked to note the amended tax evasion policy attached to Appendix A and prior to it being considered by Cabinet in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Caris. Councillor Granville, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Clarice, how many people did we prosecute last year, Clarice, for council tax?
We can obviously, if you're saying prosecute, we can no longer prosecute in relation to non-payment of council tax. But we do take people to, we do chase it and we will take people to court, but ultimately there is no imprisonment sanction, if that's what you're asking me. If you want the numbers with regards to the number of people who would have been referred to courts for non-payment next year, I don't have that with me, but I can certainly get that information for you.
That would be appropriate. So in the case in that we don't take, sorry, Chair, just to come back on that question, if we don't take people to court, and I take it then that we chase people for the money outside court, yeah? Can you give the committee then a kind of figure of what's outstanding with council tax for last year, please?
I think I better be clear. I think I may have misinterpreted what you were asking. What we are no longer able to do, we used to be able to a few years ago, actually, people could get committed to prison for non-payment of council tax. That is no longer a sanction that is available to us. However, we do take people to court to get orders in order that we can chase that debt, and we do chase that debt as much as we possibly can. But that final sanction is no longer available to us. But I can also get you the updated figures with regards to non-payment and a figure with regard to how many people we have referred into the courts this year.
Chair, I think that would be very useful for this committee and on the broader council to give us an idea what is outstanding, because that obviously alters the council tax base on which we're trying to collect that money for the previous year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. You took advantage there because obviously we're looking at the policy here. We're not looking at the nitty-gritty of how it's been delivered. But I'll allow you to ask those questions and the members, the officers to respond. But I think it's a matter for another committee in reality, when you get into the nitty-gritty of that. So thank you for that. Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Chair. Again, at page 4, 3.4 and person associated and relevant bodies in 3.5. So basically this is, Caris, tell me if I'm wrong, contractors on the preferred provider list. Now, it's going to be quite difficult, isn't it, to monitor this, and I would imagine that any issues or incidents would be raised retrospectively, because I can't see there's another way that we could monitor the behaviour of contractors and in a proactive way, really. So it does come back to retrospective and whistleblowing, I think. So I'm interested in your views on how we manage that aspect of it, because we can largely control staff and their actions. But as I say, for those contractors and people on the preferred provider lists, particularly it says only a relevant body, typically companies. But what about self-employed providing a service via the preferred provider system? Yeah, so I'm interested in your views on that. Thanks.
Caris.
Really relevant bodies are anybody who may be providing services or goods, etc., on our behalf. So it's anybody that we have that kind of a relationship with. We do have very tight processes in place with regards to, so there is some detail in the policy with regards to how we pay people. It's about staff being aware, really. If they're asked to make a payment or to deal with something which is outside of our normal processes, they have to ask those questions. So if, for instance, I think it refers to in the paperwork, if somebody asks that they, for instance, they would rather be paid cash in hand rather than go through our normal payment processes, if they talk to us about, I'm just using examples here, well, actually, if you did it this way, we could reduce it. They're probably talking about taking some tax off it because they're going round the normal. Our staff, we have processes in place to check if that's happening, and also our staff are well trained to be able to say, I'm being asked here to do something that is out of the norm, I'm going to raise it. And that's why it's important that there is an element in here about how staff should raise any issues of concerns that they've got. And they are encouraged to raise things and be told, actually, thank you for raising it, but that is fine. They're happy to do that rather than be worried about raising any issues of concern that they may have. And I don't think we have had any issues in relation to this particular issue in the last year, which would say to me that our processes are pretty tight and we are picking up any issues that may be coming to us. Does that answer your question, Councillor Davis?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my impression of this, it's very comprehensive, and it's also punctuated with some very useful scenarios and examples, which to a person like myself is very, useful in order to understand. It's also reassuring as well that the section on outsourcing is included, because of course there's activities undertaken by organisations like Arwen and Halo, and there's that association that we need to address as well. So I'm pleased to accept this policy document, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Are there any other questions, anyone? Any comments? Oh, Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, I did read this in a fair amount of detail, and I was actually quite impressed by it. I think it's a very good document. I think it's very clear, and I think, Karis, one of your points that you made there was about changing the culture so that it's a good thing and recognised as a good thing to report incidents like this. And I think that's probably the biggest change, or the biggest positive move that we can do. So I wholeheartedly welcome this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Are there any other comments? Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Griffiths? Thank you. Gareth, the only comment I make in regards to the recommendation is, apart from we noting it, do you want us to recommend a cabinet approve for that it be approved?
That would be helpful, Chair, and we can also certainly refer that in the report that goes to cabinet that you've given it due consideration.
Yeah, because I think that would, rather than just saying we noted it, is that given that several members have congratulated the policy. Obviously, it's subject to, as you said, biannual review. But I would have thought that just amending it to say that and that we recommend cabinet approve it would just give more power to your elbow. Is that okay? Okay. Recommendation then that. We note the amended anti-tax evasion policy attached to Appendix A and recommend the Cabinet its approval. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
I'll second,
Thank
Chair.
You, thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 9 then, the Forward Work Programme 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. For the recording, I'm Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the proposed Forward Work Programme for the new committee year 2023-24. We've attached a proposed Forward Work Programme at Appendix A, and obviously the dates on there are subject to those being approved by Council at the annual meeting of Council on the 17th of May. As you know from previous meetings, this is not set in stone, this Forward Work Programme, and it does change as we go through the year. New reports are added as we go along, depending on the committee's desire to receive information from officers, and also some reports actually do move around dependent on priorities. So, for example, we've mentioned earlier in the meeting that the complaints report has been deferred now till June, and that's obviously not included on this at the moment, but that will come to June's meeting of Governance and Audit Committee. In terms of the cyber security, that will be picked up as part of the corporate risk assessment, also coming to the June meeting. And in terms of things like the statement of accounts, which obviously we know from the previous year can change and can be deferred depending on issues locally and nationally. They're obviously included in the forward work programmes and specific dates at the moment, but they obviously may change as well. And new reports may come as you deem you want additional information. So this is sets out in 4.2 of the report the proposed agenda items for the June meeting, obviously in addition to the ones that we've mentioned, such as the complaints report. And the purpose is to ask committee whether there are any additional reports they want to bring, any other officers they want to invite to the meeting, and to approve the report as it stands now. But obviously we will bring updated reports with any amendments as we go through the committee cycle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions, anyone? Councillor Granville.
Thank you, Chair. Can I firstly apologise? I didn't want to take advantage of your lovely nature. But secondly, the disabled grants, can we perhaps have an update where we are with that in the process, please, Deborah, for future reference? Because we did start it, and it's just nice to see the beginning and the end, to see where we're at with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Caris, did you?
We could certainly do that. I know that has recently also been through the Corporate Overview and Safeguarding Committee, so I know they're keeping a watchful eye on the DFG position as well. So it's just this question of where it rightfully gets reported, I suppose, really. But I know that COSC is keeping an eye on that particular one as well, because they've had an update report on that in the last few months.
Well, thank you for that, Caris, but it did come to this committee originally. And we made discussions, and we moved certain issues that within that department. So I think it should come back to you just to see exactly where it's finished up on. Just as a polite way of saying to this committee, it is being dealt with another scrutiny committee, but this is where we're at now as a finishing up to it.
I'm happy to do that, Chair, to put it on the forward work programme to bring something back to you when we're at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chris. Any other questions from members? Any comments? Clearly, the only comments from me is, as you've picked up in regards to cyber, that whoever needs to be there from IT is there, as well as the director and maybe as well as the cabinet member, so that they can hear obviously what the concerns are of governance. But I'm sure that that's already on their radar. And the only other matters, as I said, I think previously, is the appointment of chair and vice chair of governance and audit needs to be item 1 and 2 of, well, whatever it is, 3, 4, or whatever it is on the agenda for the next municipal year. Okay. Any comments from anyone apart from that? No, we've got the recommendation then that we approve the forward work programme for 23-24, subject to the matters that have been raised this morning. Someone prepared?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Can I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 10 then, urgent items. There are none. And that's it. So before I formally close the meeting, can I just thank everyone for their attendance, officers and elected members. I think it's been a very good committee. I think a lot of discussion, which has been very productive moving forward in lots of areas. So thank members for their input. And I now close the meeting, and obviously see you in June, and have a safe journey home wherever you